She arrives silently at the work site to carry out the inspection, and without her employees noticing, she observes them there behind the wall. While they discuss the materials to be checked, she places a certain amount under the papers that are on the workbench to see what their intention and walks away to observe them. Meanwhile, one says to the other that he is not doing anything, and they remain there arguing, saying that he certainly put the tiles in the wrong place and says he will check the plan. Upon arriving at the counter and picking up the papers, he notices that amount there and then looks around making sure no one was seeing it, takes the value and puts it in his pocket. She stands there without believing what she had just seen, and he says he goes to check everything to see if he was right and leaves. As he passes, the other boy shakes his head and goes back to doing his work. She then approaches the workbench and checks where she left the money, and seeing that she wasn't there, she puts another amount under the papers again and walks away, leaning against the wall. Meanwhile, the boy is crouched there organizing the materials. He gets up and goes towards the bench, and when picking up the papers, he notices the money there, and looking to the sides, he takes all the money and puts it in his pocket, and without realizing that his boss is there on the side watching everything, he leaves. She is indignant at not being able to trust any of her employees and then follows the boy very cautiously. He arrives on the balcony of the building and she continues behind him. She leans against the wall while he takes his phone and makes a call saying that he got the money for the ticket and that later he would count, and that he had to hang up to go back to work. He puts his phone away and, disguising it, looks again at the money he had taken and puts it back in his pocket. While he was there checking the money, she approaches wanting to know if he had finished his job, and he says yes, and that he had just gone there to make a call to see if everything was okay at his house, and she asks him if he checked the cement delivery. He says yes, and that everything was okay. She asks him if he has something to tell her and says he was very strange, but he says no and that it was just tiredness anyway, and then he apologizes for her, saying that she has some things to do and goes out, and she is standing there and freaked out with everything that was going on at her company. She walks and then stops calling her, but when she turns around he says it's nothing, no, and that he would solve it himself, and leaves. She stands there saying that she thought she could trust him. He goes back to his work and starts loading the materials, and she continues there watching the work going through all the rooms of the construction. And he is carrying the materials, and when he arrives on the balcony he asks the guy who was standing there if he wasn't going to help carrying the materials, and calling him a weakling, and at that moment the other one appears and says that with all that weakness, if he carries something it's even dangerous for him to have a heart attack, and the two of them stand there making fun of the other guy's face, saying he did nothing and that it was very weak, while the boy is standing there listening to what they were talking about. They both say they're tired of that there, and he says he's going to give up that life and he can't take it anymore. The other then says it's true, and the worst thing is being bossed around by a woman, and that he's not even a man to teach lessons, and what a woman, she's too weak. The other says she doesn't know anything and that it's just a pain in the ass and has litanies. While they talk, the other guy stays there just watching them, and they ask him what he was looking at, and that the boss was in the next room listening to everything without them noticing. They then tell the boy to keep quiet, threatening him, saying that he has to respect both of them. The boy turns and looks down the balcony while the two continue talking, and one says that there are many valuable things there and that it would be possible to pass hand and sell, and the boss over there listening to everything is indignant, while the other says that it's true that there are lots of valuable things there, but they would have to be very smart and not take too many things so they wouldn't be suspicious of them. The young man in the helmet asks the other what he thought of taking some boxes of tiles, and that there are some copper wires down there that would also make some money, and he says that they take them and leave, and the boss there watching everything in silence, the young man, so he tells him to see if she's gone, and then they put things in the car. Meanwhile she gets out of there. They agree to go and ask the other guy what he was looking at, and they walk through the building to make sure the boss was no longer there. But she was there analyzing some documents when they arrived, and when they saw that she was still there, they disguised themselves and asked her if she needed anything, but she said that everything was all right and that they could continue with their work. They agree and leave. Soon the other boy comes over to greet her and then asks if she needs anything, but she says no and that she's just there checking the notes and that she's leaving soon. He says he's just going to take a few more bags of cement there inside, and while he takes the cement she puts a certain amount under the papers and asks him before leaving to review the plans for her, doing her a favor, and she leaves, leaving him there alone. He returns the bag to the floor and approaches the workbench to do what she asked, but when he picks up the papers he realizes that he had a certain amount of money there. He takes it and checks it and he doesn't know what to do at that moment. He thinks, looks again checking the value, and meanwhile she is there watching him. But he then decides and puts the money in his pocket and continues to look at the papers, and she looks at him again and says that not even that one she could trust, and, upset, leaves. He is still there with the papers in his hand. He checks and looking to the sides, he goes out analyzing the blueprints. She was waiting for them, and when they arrived she says that she called them because something very serious happened there, and she immediately said that earlier when she left there she left the money to buy materials there and that all the money was gone, and she asks them if any of them saw the money, or if any of them took the money. The three standing there, the strongest one with the beard soon says he didn't see anything, and she then asks the other guy and he awkwardly says no and that he works downstairs and that he hardly ever goes up there, and he says he didn't see anything. So the guy with the beard says it could only have been that other guy who stays there all the time and didn't do anything but stand there idly and kept saying he didn't know. The boy then manifests himself saying that he didn't see anything. Meanwhile the two there take the money they had taken and put it in the other's pocket, boy without him noticing, and she goes on saying that first she will have to search them. The guy then says that she's going to send them away for something they didn't do and that she was being unfair to them and that they work really hard there and it wasn't fair. The other then says that it was definitely the other one boy because he was the one who stood there pretending all the time while the two of them worked, but the boy kept saying he wasn't able to take anything from anyone. The chief then says that they could calm down and that she would search them and that one way or another the culprit would show up. Meanwhile they are all apprehensive and thoughtful. The first manifests himself saying that if she wants to search him she could feel free, and then starts to go through his pockets saying that he had nothing there with him. She then says that she arrives and that she was seeing the kind of people she hired, and then tells the guy who had the money that from that moment on he was her new foreman, but the guy with the beard asks her how so, saying that he stole her, and she makes him the foreman, and they are both indignant with her attitude there at that moment, and the other then says that if he had known he would have stolen her too so he could be the foreman, and they are like they're questioning. She then asks them to stop everything, saying that they were the two who took the money, and says that she saw everything and that that boy was the only one who looked for her to return the money that she had purposely placed on top of the bench. She was standing on the balcony when he arrived and asked if he could talk to her, and she was right away asking him what he needed, and he says that when she asked him to review the plans and taking the money out of his pocket, he says that she had left some money under the papers and that he, not knowing what to do, so he kept it to give it to him later because he thought that she would have already left the work. She thanks him and says she had left it there, and he says it was nothing and says he needed to ask him a favor, and he asks him how he could help him, and he says he is a single father and that his son was hospitalized and that I didn't have time to go visit him and that the father's affection is greatly missed at that moment, so she releases him to go see his son at the hospital, but asks him to wait a bit because she wants to talk to everyone there and that then he could take the day off. He says that the work was late and that if he was absent it could be even more late and that he would have to come back soon, but she says that he didn't need to worry about anything and asked him to just listen to what she had to say and that he could go stay with his son. They were still there, and while one says that it wasn't him or the other who took the money, it could only have been the guy with the beard himself, and went on to say that he had the face of a thief. She then asks them to stop that argument and that she was the one who put the money there and was watching them one by one, and that it was a test, because she wanted to know what kind of people she was dealing with and that they are both irresponsible and that they were fired. He then says that he really needed the job and that he has a family to take care of and that she shouldn't send him away. She then says that he should have thought before taking the money and that she wanted them out of her work at that moment, they without complaining. Who really didn't want to be working there? The boy then takes the money and hands it over, thanking her for the job opportunity, but she says that money is for him to take care of his son, and he, not knowing what to say, takes the money saying he can pay her in installments, but she tells him to stay calm and that that money was for his son's treatment and that he could take the rest of the day off and go see his son. He doesn't know how to thank her, he's very happy and leaves with new hope, and then he comes back to say that the next day he'll be there early and she's there happy with her attitude.